It is often said that Hollywood big-budget sci-fi movies are being used to desensitize us mere mortals to the shock that could be caused by the realization that we are not alone in the universe, if the conspiracy theorists are correct. Films such as E.T., Independence Day and so on are just part of a much bigger program, which is indoctrinating us into accepting the reality of extraterrestrial visitation in preparation for full disclosure. In the history of science fiction movies, no film has created more of a sensation than Steven Spielberg's award-winning 1977 blockbuster Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which tells of mankind's first contact with advanced aliens in the shadow of Devil's Tower in Wyoming. So utterly convincing and compelling was Spielberg's masterpiece that it wasn't long before some theorized that he had been party to inside information on the subject of alien contact supplied to him by the elite he rubbed shoulders with in the Democratic Party in Washington.
Steven Spielberg had obtained a number of real UFO case files, for which elements were to be used in his Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie. Certain scenes were based on real events, including elements of the paranormal. One such real encounter involved a family that were plagued by poltergeist-type disturbances prior to having their UFO experience. This Spielberg portrayed in the movie when a child was taken by extraterrestrials from his home. Electrical devices sprung to life, taps turned on, and objects flew across the kitchen. Again, this was also seen earlier in the movie when toys suddenly turned themselves on. Spielberg wanted this particular movie to portray the real aspects of this phenomenon in a way never before seen.
It's widely known that Spielberg is a major campaign contributor to the political party and has spoken in depth about UFOs and aliens with 3 presidents, namely Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and Bill Clinton, all of which had their own personal UFO sightings. It was while at a private screening of E.T. in the White House that Reagan whispered in Spielberg's ear, "You know, there aren't 6 people in this room who know how true this really is." Suspicions also surround a guest appearance in the movie by the grand fromage of modern ufology, J. Allen Hynek, who quietly smokes his pipe and watches the neon light-clad alien craft landing before initial contact is made with grey alien beings. It is fitting that Hynek makes an appearance in the movie, as it is he who supplied the classification of UFO sightings which gave the film its title. In his early career, Hynek, an astrophysicist, was a scientific advisor to the much-maligned US Air Force's investigations into unidentified flying objects, Project Sign, from 1947 to 1949, Project Grudge, 1949 to 1952, and the often spiteful and pernicious Project Blue Book, 1952 to 1961. Although initially a skeptic, it was while interviewing witnesses and investigating UFO cases that he had a change of heart and began to take the prospect of genuine unknowns seriously, and as a result went on to found the much-acclaimed Center for UFO Studies, CUFOS.
From 1952 to 1970, the United States Air Force investigated 12,618 UFO incidents under the operational name as Project Blue Book. Almost every page of the 12,000 plus case files had large black marks censoring information that could be used to cross-check Project Blue Book's controversial work. For many years, Blue Book's most vocal opponents have insisted that the standards by which cases were allegedly explained were grossly unscientific. Blue Book's goal, according to those who held it in low esteem, was to attach some explanation to every case, regardless of logic or even common sense. The urgency in which Blue Book officials tagged answers onto cases without having done any proper investigation is pretty obvious, though not proven. But if the Air Force was so eager to label case files as identified, despite the lack of supporting evidence, then those few cases which had been labelled unidentified presumably withstood all attempts to apply every kind of explanation.
Another widely believed conspiracy surrounding Close Encounters, which simply will not go away, is that the movie is based on a real event that took place decades ago in New Mexico in 1955. Years before the now infamous Roswell saucer crash, another alleged incident took place 50 miles outside Cape Girardeau, Missouri, in spring 1941, when a downed flying saucer and its occupants were recovered. This prompted the first meeting between an alien race, the Greys, who claimed to come from Zeta Reticuli, a binary star system some 39 light-years away, and humans. Recently, some very dubious videos have begun to appear on YouTube, which purport to show the first meeting with an alien that has come to be known as Skinny Bob. However, it is a curious and often confusing incident which took place in 1955 at Holloman AFB, home of the 49th Tactical Wing, situated in the high desert of New Mexico, which really captures the imagination, as if it was ever proven the implications for humanity would be truly astounding. In February 1954, President Eisenhower had sneaked away from his duties as Commander-in-Chief to enjoy a weekend of golf at the Smoke Tree Ranch Resort in Palm Springs. During his stay, Ike seemingly vanished, causing rumors to spread through the following journalists that he had suddenly been taken ill and had died. A cover story was put in place detailing how one of his dental caps had come loose, prompting an unscheduled visit to his dentist. In fact, if the story is to be believed, and let's face it, it's a fantastic one, he had slipped away to meet with small grey aliens who heralded from Zeta Reticuli, who call themselves the Etherians, at Muroc, later known as Edwards AFB. It was at this meeting that the president presumably made some extremely poor decisions. Perhaps his judgment was fatally flawed when faced with their advanced technology. For whatever reason, President Eisenhower signed the Treaty of Greda, which would see the Athenians given carte blanche to harvest human DNA in what has now become known as alien abductions, in exchange for advanced alien technology. It was an agreement which he would come to regret, as within months it became crystal clear that they had broken the treaty and were abducting humans on a global scale.
It was February the 21st, 1954 when President Eisenhower allegedly signed the Grenada Treaty after a meeting with alien Greys. The Grenada Treaty was an official agreement that, 1. The US government is to swear secrecy of the alien presence on Earth. 2. The US government may be furnished with information and advanced technology. 3. A quota for biological specimens must be met, which also includes human biology. And 4. A quota of biological candidates are to be returned to their point of origin with no recollection of any event imposed. Allegedly, it was long before Eisenhower was met by aliens for the second time.
It was to be almost exactly a year later that another meeting was to take place with ETs, this time claiming to come from Betelgeuse Alpha Orionis, a red supergiant which is the 8th brightest star in the night sky. On the 9th of February 1955, President Eisenhower announced that he was going quail hunting with Secretary of the Treasury George Humphrey and Clifford Roberts, and would be staying at Humphrey's cottage in Georgia. At 4:30 p.m., Air Force One, a Columbine 3 airplane carrying the president, took off, closely followed by a second plane full of press officers and journalists. The quail hunt was brought to an abrupt end when the heavens opened and it began to pour down. So the president retreated to the warmth and safety of Humphrey's cottage. His press secretary, James Haggerty, reported to the gathered mass of journalists that Ike had come down with a bad case of the sniffles and was sheltering at the cottage playing bridge. While the press partied the night away, President Eisenhower crept away unseen and flew overnight to Holloman AFB, where he had a pre-arranged meeting to keep with alien beings. For the next 33 hours, the whereabouts of President Eisenhower would remain a mystery that exists to this very day. The base commander, Colonel Sharp, seems to have been kept in the dark. As to the arrival of the ETs at his base, appears to have totally caught him off guard. At 5:32 a.m., the base's Doppler radar picked up 3 unidentified contacts entering their controlled airspace and tried repeatedly to contact and warn them of the dangers without receiving a response. After receiving nothing but static hiss, 3 fighter planes were ordered to intercept the unknowns, while Colonel Sharp contacted Edwards AFB and Wright-Patterson to ask whether they were testing any top-secret military aircraft in their vicinity. When the answer came back that they had nothing in the air that moment, he brought the base to a state of red alert. The radar tracked 3 objects in all, 2 of which flew close together while a third followed on some 5 minutes behind them. As luck would have it, a helicopter that was on routine photographic missions was approaching Holloman and took film of the objects as they passed them by. They were described as being 25 to 30 feet across, were brightly polished silver in color, saucer-shaped, and wobbled as they flew. Another camera crew on the ground ran off 600 feet of film as one of the objects descended in front of the San Andreas Mountains and quickly approached the base. Segments of this film were apparently supplied to author and filmmaker Robert Eminger for inclusion in his military-sanctioned UFO documentary, UFOs Past, Present and Future. Finally, the saucer hovered 10 feet above the ground, wobbled as 3 tripod legs descended before it landed with a hiss. Even as it was settling on the ground, Colonel Sharp and 2 unnamed base scientists were hastily crossing the tarmac towards the landed craft. As they neared, a door opened in the side of the UFO before 3 beings descended steps and approached the base commander and his 2 aides. The alien beings were described as being small in stature, light blue in color, had a prominent pointed nose, and wore a rope like a headband. They also spoke perfect English. Their message was clear: under no conditions should we trust the Greys from Zeta Reticuli. But of course President Eisenhower, who was at that very moment racing towards the base, had already made a deal with them. Their warning was near on exactly a year late. At 9 a.m., Air Force One touched down at Holloman, and the pilot, Major Bill Draper, taxied the plane 75 yards back down the runway, so it was as far away from the array of buildings and hangars as was possible. No sooner had the aircraft's engines fell silent than the 2 UFOs quickly approached, one of which stayed airborne surveying the scene, while the other landed some 200 feet in front of the president's plane. A door on the side of the saucer opened, and President Eisenhower hastily left his plane and rushed across to the craft before entering without hesitating. It seems clear that Ike trusted these aliens, which he may have already previously met, as he ventured into the saucer alone without his security. For 40 minutes, the president and the aliens conversed about the dangers of nuclear weapons and stressed how the Zeta Reticuli Grey aliens should not be trusted. The aliens offered to share their technology as long as he promoted peace and decommissioned his nuclear missiles. But this was rejected as the Cold War was getting colder with each passing day. America could not leave itself unprotected. After the meeting, the aliens unceremoniously left as quickly as they had appeared, and Air Force One was dragged into a hangar where the President and Colonel Sharp gave a brief talk to the 225 Air Force personnel at a connecting supply hangar concerning security. In essence, they were warned not to say anything or even speak about the events of the day. It's said that between 1953 and 1955, Dwight D. Eisenhower met with 3 different races of aliens, and that he saw his first UFO while aboard a ship off the British coast in 1952. In fact, Eisenhower's name has become synonymous with the UFO subject. It's also a fact that at this time, UFO and alien fever became viral and caught the imagination of the general public. The age of alien abduction had well and truly arrived. The number of abductees and animal mutilations began to soar, while national security seemingly clamped down on UFO sightings, sometimes going to ludicrous lengths to ridicule witnesses and dismiss their stories of meeting beings from beyond the stars. Over 60 years later, as the trendy ufologists meekly call on governments around the globe to discuss what they know about the subject of UFOs, the impenetrable cloak of secrecy shows no signs of lifting.
So, if a treaty took place, did it go wrong? Did we get far more than what we bargained for? Is it now out of control? These are just a few of the questions researchers often ponder. Can we really trust anything we are being told? According to hundreds, if not thousands of witnesses, it would seem ETs regularly deliver the same message, like it's a protocol to tell us the same thing over and over: preserve and protect the Earth. It would seem that the ETs, if that's what they truly are, don't seem to care so much about us, but rather our planet. Are these messages of concern for humanity or something else?
One wonders whether the cover-up is to hide alien reality or to continue to conceal the fact that the 34th President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, a hero to all Americans and the commanding five-star general in the European Theatre of Operations, an honourable man known for his decisive actions, is responsible for selling out the human race and causing misery and mental torment to those who are openly ridiculed for claiming to have been snatched from the warmth of reality by alien beings.
There's been many times when the UFO phenomena is somehow connected with the paranormal, and when we look at the Skull experiment, or certainly the continued experiments that took place in Scotland some years after Skull finished, was very interesting. What we had was a number of incidents that actually took place regarding UFOs and the paranormal. And in these circumstances, we had a situation where the mediums were sat in a circle and objects manifested during this so-called seance. These objects were, they were described as miniature UFOs. I mean, small flying discs. They couldn't be explained. I mean, it was quite profound that these things were seen to be like a bright orangey amber colour around them, but the witnesses clearly saw that these were disc-shaped objects, and there were several of them flying around the rooms quite slowly. Even one of the people there said that they saw one of these things land on the hand, and had no weight or feel to it. These strange lights continued for quite some time. There has also been a number of incidents where controlled communications have taken place during these experiments with what is referred to as some type of entities that refer to themselves as interdimensional beings. To you and me, we might refer to these things as aliens or extraterrestrial, and it's certainly interesting that certain things did turn up on photographs and video film during the original Skull experiment in Norfolk, where these strange faces appeared. In fact, they actually looked quite alien grey looking, except it had a blue tinge, hence its name was Blue. But it did have the stereotypical large black eyes. And that wasn't the first time these things were apparently experienced. There has been on other occasions during a particular experiment when they have communications with entities claiming to be from other dimensions, other worlds, and of course that there was a huge amount which were wanting to come through. And it is speculated the reasons why Skull experiment came to an end in Norfolk is because the mediums actually were starting to lose control over what they were actually communicating with. If that's the case, then we have to query, what was it they were referring to? Well, who were they talking with? And of course, really, are these extraterrestrials or interdimensionals we're really dealing with? Nevertheless, it really is a problematic subject when we're trying to work out what the UFO phenomena really represents, from small strange objects and lights to gigantic ships in the sky. What do they really represent? We really don't know. Looking back at Project Blue Book's files, researchers from around the world, including myself, have not been convinced about what Blue Book's conclusions reached. When you actually start to look for report forms, I mean, any UFO investigator knows when you go and talk to witnesses, you've got to compile a UFO report form. You can't commit all this to mind. And there was, in fact, a proper UFO report form, a standardised report form, which was used by Blue Book investigators. Where are those report forms? Because when you start to realise that they were dealing with 12,618 cases with 701 unknowns, where are all those reports? They wasn't done. Simply because They didn't really care. I don't think they were very interested. I think what Blue Book's officers were trying to do is just trying to disprove anything that came across their desks as having some type of mundane explanation. And the reason being is that they wanted to portray the UFO phenomenon to be nothing more than crazy, kooky stories, fake things, misidentifications of birds and clouds and the planet Venus, and nothing more. But I'll tell you now, that was far from the truth.